What you're about to see is an interview from the year, ironically, 1984. It involves KGB Defector Yuri Bezmenov and his revelation of what he called the Soviet subversion model, a four-point plan by which the Soviet Union sought to subvert the United States from within. I think I can assure you that you're going to find what he says chilling in how it seems to be playing out right before our very eyes.
Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
All right, I just want to make sure we have that definition really set in front of us here as he takes us through the process. Big picture, Bezmenov is making the point that much of the work of the KGB had literally nothing to do with the James Bond-like glamours of espionage and intrigue. Instead, much of it involved a very slow, very patient, but very deliberate process of undermining the stability of a rival nation through what they called ideological subversion. And here's how he defined that. Quote, what it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. I gotta say, when I first heard that, some time back, I asked myself, is he defining or is he describing? Because what he just said there could easily be a description of many in our society today. We have an entire class of people whose perception of reality is quite literally beyond the sensible, beyond the biological, beyond the national. They're increasingly pushing a vision of reality that seemingly makes no sense, even to people on the left like Bill Maher. And yet everyone's scared to death to confront them on it, to stand up to this, lest you be excommunicated, canceled.
It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization.
When he talked about this first stage of demoralization, I could not help but think of the Frankfurt School, which was a group of European academics who came over to the United States to escape Hitler, but brought their cultural Marxist ideas to the American university. And for various reasons, the ideas flourished in colleges across the nation. And at the heart of the Frankfurt School's ideology is this notion of critical theory, which teaches students how to supposedly expose everything in our culture, from our politics to our economics, from our entertainment to our fashion, you name it, as inherently racist, sexist, and homophobic. And eventually, critical theory entered into our K-12 classrooms through the broader notion of what's called critical pedagogy, from which we get what's called CRT, or critical race theory. But what Bezmenov is saying here is that all of that was highly deliberate. It wasn't simply an academic development in the free exchange of ideas. It was more like a virus that was deliberately injected into our national culture and radically weakened our social immune system. And as he put it, it was more effective than any KGB agent could have imagined. And he would go on to say that that's going to take a new generation of Americans to rise up and push back against this neo-Marxist ideological filth that so permeated the last couple of generations.
The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast.
Well, it's only gone downhill from there. Woke cancel culture has completely infected our mainstream economy and, unfortunately, our military.
And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look I do want to know.
Yeah, that's Woke Milley. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, defending, teaching cultural Marxism to our officers. Hey, gang, I've been teasing you all month that I've got something big to share with you at the end of the month. Well, here we are this Friday at 12 Eastern. I'm sending out a special email to my email list only. I can't share it here, but I'll give you a little hint. If you're a fan of the TV show The Chosen, you're going to love this. So what could be my special announcement? I'm sharing this important announcement on my newsletter this Friday at noon Eastern, and you don't want to miss it. All you got to do is click on the link below and sign up for my newsletter now at turleytalks.com/subscribe. You will not hear this news that's really important for our movement. You're not going to hear it anywhere else but from my email list. So make sure to click on that link below right now and subscribe.
The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not.
Yeah, again, as I hear him describe this crisis stage, I just couldn't help but think of where we are today with the bumbling Biden administration. I mean, unprecedented inflation, surging gas prices, a looming recession, baby formula shortages, supply chain interruptions. I need another hand. Border implosion, a violent crime epidemic, defunding the police, woke school boards, global pandemics, mass lockdowns, unconstitutional vax mandates. And then after that, normalization. This crisis condition ends up being the new normal. A fully destabilized nation is now the new normal, and the enemy has been thwarted from within. I mean, it's pretty terrifying stuff. But again, the good news is that Bezmenov believed that we were just one generation away from American renewal. And everywhere we look, that's exactly what we're seeing. There is nothing short of a massive grassroots backlash against woke cultural Marxism, and it's just the beginning. We will take our nation back. And we will go through a conservative renaissance. And we'll have people like Yuri Bezmenov to thank. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You definitely want to check out my latest video on a Vietnam vet getting challenged by woke bullies, and you won't believe what happened next. You'd absolutely love it. Make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.